Ladies and gentlemen, about 3 years ago, Living Tomorrow started the project in Amsterdam in Holland. And at the opening ceremony over there, there was a sort of similar debate as we have one here on innovation and on the role of Living Tomorrow with important CEOs of different companies. And let's have now a short view on what was said then, December 2003, at Living Tomorrow in Amsterdam.
We moeten het in Europa van kennis hebben. En kennis is de basis voor innovatie. Ik heb een hele eenvoudige definitie van innovatie. Dat is het succesvol introduceren van iets nieuws. Daar begint het. En dan ben je weer terug bij Living Tomorrow, want daar zoeken we dat contact met de markt.
De belangrijkste inhaalslag is een mentaliteitskwestie. Niemand in deze wereld verzekert ons van onze hoge levensstandaard. Dat is dus niet iets wat gegeven is. We zullen ervoor moeten werken, we zullen ervoor moeten vechten. En dit is een veranderende wereld waar we in leven.
Ik denk dat dit soort initiatieven in West-Europa ook, ik denk de samenleving een beetje moeten helpen wakker maken. Dat wij er een tandje bij moeten zetten. Want inderdaad, als je in China gaat kijken, dan is het niet zo dat China alleen maar goedkoop produceert.
In Europa begrijpen wij onvoldoende, en dan heb ik het niet over de burger op straat, maar ik denk onze politieke en economische elite begrijpt onvoldoende dat een mentaliteitsverandering nodig is. En we zullen het op een andere manier moeten aanpakken. Anders halen we die slag op 2010 die we ons gesteld hebben absoluut niet.
And, ladies and gentlemen, the last speaker we saw there is Anthony Burgmans, from the CEO from Unilever. And he's again with us. Mr. Burgmans, please come on stage. You're all welcome. Have a seat. I asked you last, Mr. Burgmans, because I wanted to start the debate with you. We saw you in Amsterdam in 2003 saying that we will have to work hard and fight hard even, and that we did not enough understand that we needed a sort of mental switch. But that was 2003, now we have 2007. Has it changed since then?
Well, I also said at the time, I'm an optimist by nature, but I'm a little bit pessimistic when I look at the targets of 2010. And these, of course, were the Lisbon targets, which our politicians had set so ambitiously a long, long time ago. But we're now closer to 2010. And unfortunately, we have to see that this process has stalled. We were going to be the most vibrant, fastest growing continent, technology-based continent of the world. And where are we in 2007? We have 2 referenda in France and the Netherlands which have stalled and halted the European process. Yes, we have 27 members, which in itself is very good. But our economic growth is poor compared to the rest of the world. And Europe has still not faced up to the task that it's not about Europe, but it's about the world now. And in the 90s we had the luxury of setting the pace in a way which we liked. But now we have the issue of globalizations. So we have economic giants like India and China coming forward and challenging us. And it's very funny. If you go to India, Mumbai or Shanghai in China, no one cares about Europe. No one cares about us. The only thing they care about is their own future and their own progress. So we better get our house in order. And unfortunately, I was a bit prophetic there. I wish I was wrong, but I don't think we've made much progress.
Yes. Let's broaden up the debate. And whoever wants to speak, please ask you how to grant the word. When I was preparing this debate, I came upon a study. It was a sort of comparative study of 10 economic regions in Europe and Northern America. And as far as Flanders was concerned, this region, the conclusion was that we were doing well, but we're not very successful, not to say the least, we're not successful in making the switch from innovation on the one hand to commercial success on the other hand. I was wondering myself, why? Who's to blame?
Well, I don't think you should play the blame game. I think it's a collective responsibility of us all, of the government, yes, but also of everybody involved. I think as a government we've done quite a bit in the past few years, not just adding money to the budgets of innovation and research, which is good in itself, but which is a necessary condition but not a sufficient condition. But now comes the hardest part. We've also adapted our financial instruments, we provided money for companies, innovation funds and the like. I'm not going to repeat all that here, we've done that. But now comes the hardest part, and the hardest part is changing people's mentality. And
Yes.
if I just may finish my
Of course you
sentence,
can.
changing a mentality starts at the bottom. For example, today we've seen how our schools work. They're very good. We have very good education, but it's not creative enough. It doesn't stimulate children and people to think independently, to think creatively. We still use the old methods too much.
Yes, that's as far as the role of the government, but as what we saw on the video was Mr. Burgmans saying that even in the heads of what he called the economical elite, there was something wrong. The mental switch of which Mrs. Moerman talked a few seconds ago is not made in the heads even of CEOs, I think. Mr. Goodlot?
It is made, that's for sure. And I think we shouldn't be pessimistic, because innovation is a day-to-day business. And of course we are here around a team which is living tomorrow. But all of us are already living in the future, from day to day. And I see it very practically. When I see the assortment that we are offering to our customers, well, that's 15,000 items. Out of those 15,000 items, there's 2,000 to 3,000 that change every year. That's innovation. That's basic innovation. Mm-hmm. But this means that there has been an industry, there has been a small enterprise or a big enterprise behind that brought that innovation and allowed us to offer something different to the customer.
Yes, but still I think that even in companies and businesses, innovation is not really something everybody is happy with. I remember the debate in Amsterdam 3 years ago. One of the CEOs saying there, the question was, what was the most remarkable thing that you saw in Living Tomorrow in Amsterdam at that time? And his answer was very remarkable. He said, well, the most remarkable thing was that it all worked. Which is, in fact, a sort of proof of a deep down unhappy feeling with innovation. It might work, it might not work. Peter.
I don't think that's what he meant. When you deal with innovation, first of all, it's not an easy job. You need the right culture, you need the partnerships, you need the platform, you need the money, you need the courage, and there's no guarantee for success. So I think what they meant is that we went through all this process. And we integrated a lot of things in Living Tomorrow Amsterdam, like we did here, and we show that it works. That you can demonstrate something, you can create something together which is meaningful, where there is a good possibility for future business, where you find the consumers who like that and enthusiastically on it. Mm-hmm. So I think that is what's meant. The big difficulty for me when you talk about innovation, that is really finding the chemistry to do it. I'm sure business leaders really want it. But finding the chemistry, it's like an artist who has to find the chemistry to really make a successful thing that connects to people. And that's not easy.
But even business leaders are in a sort of paradox between, on the one hand, the belief that innovation is necessary even. That's the one hand. On the other hand, innovation is risky. Perhaps dangerous even. Mr. Burgmans?
Without innovation, no life. For a businessman, innovation is the bloodline into the future.
But
so
do you
agree
it's a sort of paradox?
But there is the risk-reward ratio in Europe. I'm not talking about Flanders, I'm not talking about Belgium, I'm not talking about Holland, but the risk-reward ratio is unfavorable in Europe. And there are two reasons for that. First of all, over-regulation, and secondly, far too high tax rates. Yes? And these two things together don't make it attractive to start taking risks. And that's the mental switch which has to change. Leave more money into society, let citizens themselves decide over how they're going to make choices with the funds which they have generated. Of course we need basic services from government, so I'm not saying that government hasn't got an important role to play, but compared to other areas in the world, even within Europe like Ireland, but also the United States, the average tax rate in the United States is 10 to 15 percentage points lower than it is in Europe. I'm not saying it's zero, it's about 35% over there, while it's close to 50% in Europe. And this explains one of the issues which we have in Europe, is that the risk-reward premium. Because even if it works, your innovation, yes, even after you have overcome all the hurdles in terms of regulation, and if it then works, you're being taxed at a very high rate. So a lot of people say, I better depend on the government for my living rather than sticking out my neck and working. And that's what I meant by the mentality switch.
Yeah, but isn't that a bit too easy to say, well, you know, it's true, it's a paradox, but the problem is the government, in fact.
I didn't say that. I think I agree with the minister.
I tried to summarize.
I didn't say that. I said, and I agree with the minister, it's a problem which we all have. It's our problem. Yes? I'm not going to accuse governments for setting high tax rates, because after all, we elected those governments into office. So I think it's a shared responsibility. But if we want to compete against China, against India, we'll have to make modifications.
The government?
Yeah, as always. No, I agree that taxes are too high.
Yes.
Especially corporate taxes, but also taxes on labor, because we price it out of the market. And it's a partial, and regulations are too complex. But it's only a partial explanation. What is also true is that there is risk aversion, because taking a risk and failing is punished. And that we should change too, also in our legislation.
How can you change that?
Well, first of all, you have to change your legislation. If you go bankrupt in this country, it's like they put some kind of a mark on your head and you're branded for life, right? So we should change that. In the US, there is an opportunity to fail. Entrepreneurship, you can succeed, but you can also fail. And there you have the chance to start all over again, and here you don't. So that's one thing. But pointing exclusively at the government is not correct. If we are talking not about the Lisbon, but about the Barcelona quantitative targets, 3% of GDP going to research in 2010, what I see from my perspective in Flanders is that government expenditure is going up year after year, and that the expenditure by the companies went down. It's now picking up a little bit, according to first indications, but that it went down. There's no use, I repeat what I said at the beginning, playing the blame game. We should collectively try to get more innovation into society. And saying that they will all do it themselves is not true too, because you need some kind of way, and that's a role for government, of bringing small companies, big companies and universities together.
That's something I'd like to know from the other persons on the couch. Mrs. Moerman said that companies reduce costs. That's what we always do, but they reduce even innovation cost. Is that true?
Research and innovation, yeah. It was
That's
in
a very stupid thing to do, in my opinion.
1.56, and now, according to recent figures, it's 1.65.
Why do you do so?
Far from 2%.
Why do you do so?
Can I offer an explanation?
Yes,
Why
please.
is it that 20 years ago we had a market share which was twice as high as the US companies in pharmaceuticals? Today it's the other way around. It's a very R&D driven society. We have driven our R&D establishments out of Europe into the United States. And why? It's one word: education. We're not spending enough on the right type of education. If you look at the OECD figures, who topped the list in terms of education? It's the United States, it's Korea. Yes, it's also Sweden and Finland, I must say, and it's Iceland. But you see enormous expenditures in the US, and so when CEOs of pharma companies are confronted with the choice, where shall I build this lab? Shall I do it here in Brussels, or shall I do it in California? Then they have to go to California. And the reason is because we haven't got the scientists anymore. We haven't got the young people who are properly educated.
Excuse me, but that's...
Reply of the government?
BULL. I disagree strongly. I think, first of all, we have strong pharmaceutical research in my country, and it's expanding. And we have some of the major pharmaceutical companies doing their research here. Secondly, pointing to the US, they have a great shortage of scientists and researchers. 60% of all doctorates awarded in the US are given to non-Americans. So if those pull out, they'll be in big trouble as well.
Not pulling out.
And
they're not pulling out.
there is more than just... You said you're an optimist. Where I come from, optimism is a moral duty, right? That's what our Prime Minister says. And I take that quite literally. So it is true that there are challenges. It is true that there are problems. But let's tackle them. And of course our market share in the world is declining because the others are growing too. And isn't that exactly what we want? Do we want the Chinese to stay in agricultural society? Do we want India to stay poor forever? No. If their markets grow, ours will too.
Well, I'm not disputing that at all. I'm not disputing that at all. Can I just add one thing? 3 years ago, the scientists in Paris came marching out on the street because we can't afford the proper research in biotechnology in France. We have the scientists, but we don't give them the budgets. At the same time, in that same country in France, we're subsidizing the farmers. So we're investing in the past. Half the EU budget is about agricultural subsidies, which for Europe is an industry of the past, while we cannot afford to invest into the future. And this is the issue. The issues we're not making the right choices for living tomorrow, if I may say so.
Okay. What about the other CEO? Because the basic the basic question was that there was some hesitation in innovation. Mr. van der Putten.
Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, I think that I do agree that the balance might be the balance between the reward and the risk might not be that favorable. But at the end of the day, the benefit you get when you get innovation through, and sometimes it's fundamental, but sometimes it is just mixing different elements differently. It can be just a stupid idea that brings millions and millions. So the competitive advantage you get through innovation is such that as a CEO, I think it is our duty to really promote innovation. But innovation, the word was said a few minutes ago, is also about culture. It's to make sure that, of course, you have an R&D department where you see part of your cost allocated, but it is much more than that. Everyone, from the floor to the CEO, has a role there because they have a very good grip on what's happening. They are facing the customer. They can really bring that. Now, as a CEO, you need to make sure there is a process in place to, first of all, generate that energy, make sure the process filters the good ideas from the less good ideas, and that then the specialists get into some more maybe profound work to get that into a product or a market service.
Let us try a list of what people should do to have successful innovation. Let's say the conditio sine qua non. What do we have to do?
I think
Peter?
We have a lot of experience with this. First of all, I think they should understand the importance of innovation. Basically, what is happening in our world, there are 1/3 of the world's citizens, India, China, and big percentages in Southern America or in Eastern Europe, people who are in the developing countries fighting for a better life. And for our industry, that's a competition. So they're more hungry, if you like. And if it takes a lot to really fight for the future and to experience unknown roads, although there is a lot of risk on failing in your innovation processes and your budgets you invest, we should go for it. Because that's the only way we can compete in the future, because we are performing better and we can use our skills we have here in the West of understanding cultures, understanding the consumer, having strong brands, having a lot of knowledge. So you really have to do it, and that takes a lot of courage.
I try to summarize. First point, you've got to be convinced that innovation is necessary and a really condition sine qua non only to survive.
And my second point is you need to have the courage and really do it. And for that
that's
you need
more or
the
less the
culture.
same thing. But is there another conditio sine qua non for successful innovation? Mrs. Moerman?
You need diversity. You can only get challenging and good ideas if in your company and in your government and your society you have people from different ages, origins, sexes, education collaborating. If everybody in your company is a guy in a suit with a tie, you won't get innovation.
Can you explain why this diversity is...
Sorry.
I'm taking my tie off. I don't understand for this.
But Mr. Berkmans, don't go any further. And I would like to speak about innovation. Diversity, why is it so important? In a few lines.
Well, it's simple. Even if you don't believe it, scientific research has proven that if you get diverse teams together, you get more creative ideas out of them. So
Deep conviction first. Second point, diversity. Is there a third point, Mr. Goethals?
There isn't a third point, because I just want to emphasize that diversity is for sure, but it's not only diversity from the persons, also from the different departments. There isn't a department who is going to give you innovation within the company. R&D within a company is perhaps, when I have a look at a retail company, well, we don't have R&D within a retail company as a standalone. But I think that all of the research and development can be done throughout the company, whether it be marketing, whether it be operational, wherever it can be. Whether people are together, you can innovate.
We've got 2 points already. Is there a third point? Diversity, conviction. Frank?
Maybe another quite simple point. I mean, you have a lot of companies where somebody is on the top of the company, and there are a lot of guys who have good ideas and want to innovate. But sometimes it's a human problem. Sometimes a guy at the top just don't want to work with the other guys, and he fails to see to tomorrow, to see what's going on, and he just wants to stay as he is, and that's a human factor. It's a quite simple one, but a lot of times there is the problem.
And yes, please, Mr. Hansen.
Maybe to try to reconciliate the big business and the big government, there is maybe a fourth element to innovate. It's very, very simply to be forced, obliged to innovate due to new regulations. And that's the case, for instance, in some businesses such as water business or a waste business, also taking into account the growth of the needs worldwide, but even in Europe, even in Belgium, even in this kind of so-called mature countries, there is such a level of growth and a few regulations that we are, in our kind of businesses, forced to innovate. That's, by the way, what we do. It's maybe a factor.
And the last point, working together. Isn't that important?
That's
Open innovation.
But that's what Living Tomorrow is about. We do discover here a platform which is great for us as an industry, and then when we initiated here, to come over here, then we have seen that working together with different companies creating, for example, the store of the future. We haven't been doing that on our own. We have been doing that with partners, and that gives possibilities.
But isn't that at the same time dangerous as well, because your competitors can see what your plans are for the future,
But the
and they can
competitors
imitate.
will see it anyhow. the competitors will see it anyhow. The thing is to be the first. And when you are the first, you're going to be better than the competitor.
Yes. On the role of Living Tomorrow we will talk on later, but stay with us because some other persons came to the stage as well. I would like to ask a question to, and the first one to speak to is the Mayor of Vilvoorde, Jean-Luc De Hane. Mr. De Hane, there was some debate over there between optimists on the one hand and pessimists on the other hand. What about you?
These are two categories where I cannot do nothing with, because it's a state of the mind. I always said you can only go forward with voluntarists.
Yes, but still, what was said there was Europe has got a big, huge problem.
Europe has a big, huge problem. And the debate we are in after the negative referenda in France and in the Netherlands is a totally underestimated problem. Because Europe can only survive in a global world as Europe and not as 27 different member states. And two examples. There was discussion there about scientific research. If you do 27 times the same, if you should more coordinate it at European level with the same amount, you can do three times as much.
Spoil a lot of energy.
And that's compared with the United States, for instance, one of the handicaps. On the other hand, each time I go to China and I come back, I have the impression I come back to an old man's house, where we defend things and in a certain sense are afraid from change. There where if you are in China, in Brazil, in India, you see people who want to go forwards, who work for it, who want to go forwards. And one of the things we should not, that we should see, in the beginning of globalization we thought China, India, Brazil will be for basic goods and we will do the intelligent things. What you should see is that they are a long time making all these intelligent things faster and better than we. And they will do everything and they will be competitors in everything. And so if we don't adapt our society, we will have a big problem and we will not count in that global society. And we can only count if we are there as Europe. For instance, in all the discussions at global level, we can have a heavy weight as Europe. We have no weight if each of the 27 members go there alone.
A completely other question. You're the Mayor of Vilvoorde, proud to have Living Tomorrow on your territory?
Not only proud, I think it's an important motor also for us, and we supported it from the beginning. And we are doing now a step more in that sense that we want to make a link between the town and Living Tomorrow, making the city town of the future. And we are now partners together with Schiphol here in Living Tomorrow to, like Deleuze, make the shop of tomorrow linked to the house of tomorrow. We want to make the town hall linked to Living Tomorrow.
Thank you, Jean-Luc De Hane. Another person here is Marc Vergnano from Dupont-Nemours. I had the privilege, Mr. Vergnano, to have a quick tour in Living Tomorrow some hours ago. And what I saw from your company has got, in my opinion, one main characteristic, which is sustainability. Am I right or am I right?
You're half right. So
explain.
So I would say half right being, I'll talk about sustainability in a second. The first piece is about science. So DuPont is a science company. And if you look back over our history since 1802, we brought out about 34,000 patents. That's one every other day. So from that standpoint, innovation being driven by the marketplace is the first piece. Now you link it with sustainability. And if we're going to last another 200 years, you need to have products that are going to be sustainable. And if you look at through Living Tomorrow, as all of you are going to have the opportunity to walk through it, you'll see some of the products you mentioned, our Tyvek breather membranes that keep allow heat to stay in the home, but allow breathability to occur. You'll see our Energain panels that actually absorb heat during the day, release those into the house during the evening. Mm-hmm. You'll see as you mentioned, the Korean kitchen of the future, which is very highly innovative. You'll see lots of products that go into products like Suez makes, which are photovoltaic panels. So I think you need to link the two. You have to have both the innovation and the science, and you have to link it with sustainability.
And, needless to say, you're very happy with Living Tomorrow?
very happy with Living Tomorrow. I think it's a great showcase not only for our products, it's a great showcase for a lot of the innovative solutions that end up being collaborative innovative solutions. And you brought up the point about sustainability. Companies like ourselves and many here that are represented here, sustainability is something that's very, very precious to us. Just late last year, DuPont announced their new goals for 2015 around sustainability. Half of those were reducing our footprint, but the other half were about new products that go into the marketplace, products that reduce greenhouse gases, products that make people safe, products that actually save energy. So I think this is a great showplace for those kind of products.
Thank you, Mark. And another person here on the table is Ludo de Keulenaar from Deloitte. Mr. de Keulenaar, do you allow me to be honest with you? What are you doing here? I don't understand.
From that I count that you would have preferred somebody else sitting here. Anyway, first of all, no, it's very good to be in a company of very good clients like Deleuze and Brussels Airlines and Suez, of course. But more seriously, and DuPont, more seriously, we're advising about 12,000 clients on a daily basis, large companies, public institutions, smaller companies. So I think we are very close to what the Belgian and the Flanders economy is all about. And we want to be at the heart of innovation. We want to be where innovation is being thought about, where innovation is being put at work, because that's a basic message that we want to bring to these 12,000 clients on a daily basis.
You're a sort of support.
We're support, but I think we can be an enabler. We can enable innovation processes and to really get them started in our economy and make sure that they're not being restricted to what is happening in a small community of players here, but is being carried out throughout the country.
Thank you, Ludo. Joachim de Vos from Living Tomorrow. Let me be honest. Why does Living Tomorrow have its own engineers, its own ICT people? You can use Mr. de Keulenaar's people or from the Deleuze and everywhere. Why do you have your own staff?
Yeah, you have to see this from a special perspective. You know that we work with over 40 partners in this project. Each one is an expert in its own field of expertise. But when you do cross-pollination, when you make action with all those companies together, we have the experience during the last 10 years that you need some very special, dedicated skills. Not only people who help them, who catalyze them, just like Deloitte also helps us in this process with our partners, but also people who does it, who really make it. So you can bring people in and you can confront them with innovation and get feedback. Yeah. And those skills are very specific to the Living Tomorrow research team.
Now the question, when I was having my quick tour through Living Tomorrow, I thought this is going to be here for 5 other more years, and in 2012 we will be back here and it will be just the same in the house, or not?
No. This is a remarkable day, but it's only the start. We already worked for over 1,000 days towards this inauguration, towards this project, and what you will see within a minute are most amazing things, new innovations. But today, it starts for us. It's a 5-year period that we will constantly be an evolution, that we will receive feedback from business people, from consumers, and we will bring this back into the research project, and we will upgrade, renew, or even skip a few applications depending on the feedback we get from public and business.
Thank you, Joachim, and thank you to the 4 of us. Ladies and gentlemen, give them a round of applause. And let's speak a few more words on Living Tomorrow itself. Frank, I would like to ask you a somewhat silly question about, in every word you read on Living Tomorrow, there is written down, Living Tomorrow stands for consumer-friendly innovation. Is there consumer-unfriendly innovation?
Yes, of course. I just built my house, and it was finished, let's say 8 months ago, and I'm still reading the manuals of everything I bought. So sometimes it's you get crazy about what you have to read. So yes, indeed, and that's a simple example, but sometimes you don't know how it works and what does it mean, innovation, when people can't use it. So first of all, it has to be friendly to be used, and of course our children can use it easier than us, but yes, it exists unfriendly.
Yeah, and Peter, if I understand everything well, one that visits Living Tomorrow can deduce from what he or she sees the tendencies in society. Is that true?
Yes, of course.
What are these tendencies? What can you see, and what are the tendencies behind it?
Well, look at Grandpa's room in our newest project here. One of the tendencies in our society is that we're getting gray. Everybody knows this. And a big problem with that is that it costs a lot of money to bring elderly people into special homes or have them too long in hospitals. So if you can make it possible, thanks to technology and thanks to these innovations and collaborations, to create environments where these elderly people can live longer independently in their own house or in a house together with their family, and that's what we show here, you do a good thing. We help them with taking their medication, with facilitating their, sometimes when they have inabilities or disabilities, and that's one of the ways we translate one trend into a practical solution, and that we do with so many trends.
Yeah. Another tendency is that what is shown here is better, of course, but it's most of the time healthier and safer. It seems to me pretty important as the tendencies behind what is shown. Mr. Houtals?
Absolutely, and not only healthier, but the customer wants to know also more about his personal health. And so what is asked by the customer is to have information for himself. And that is one of the things that we are trying to realize here, that giving him the information he is asking for. For the moment, we are giving generic information to the consumer.
Yeah.
I think that through technology, we can give to the consumer dedicated to him. That's what he is asking for. And to that extent, he's asking about his health.
Yeah. Can I deduce from what is shown the idea that life goes faster than, let's say, 20 years ago?
I would say almost obviously, and once again due to the changes of the world in general terms, but also to the main drivers, I think, of our businesses, be it globalization of the businesses, be it the new requirements of the consumers, and all my colleagues dealt about the problematic of the consumers. Maybe one problem, it's also the definition of the fair price. I think that it could be useful also from an information point of view, that the concept of fair price could be comprehensive for from the consumer point of view as a global fair price, as I say, taking also into account some main drivers of the society in a whole. Let's say the business, but also the consumer state from tomorrow and not only from today. So there are, I think, two fair prices: the short-term fair price and the fair price for tomorrow included.
Yes. Living Tomorrow tries to bring the consumers to new things, but let's do some criticism as well. Isn't that a too limited system? Because I can imagine that if a consumer is confronted with all those new things, he likes that. Always. Because it's new. Because it's beautiful. Because it's, I don't know.
No. That's not true.
That's not true.
No.
Mrs. Moerman?
That's not true, and that's precisely the interesting thing about test beds, such as Living Tomorrow, and we have another one as well in ICT in Hasselt. People may be intrigued by new things, but in order to know what they think about it, they have to be able to use them and to get acquainted with them. And that can save a lot of money to companies. They can invent beautiful things and do beautiful innovations, but if the consumer doesn't want it, then you're getting nowhere with your service or your product. And the main thing now which hampers innovation is not a lack of technological knowledge, but is acceptance by the user, acceptance by the consumer. So presenting all this to the consumer, but also giving her the reaction, the possibility to react to it, is very useful, I think, for companies, because it avoids going into the wrong direction all the way to the market.
Yes. Well, Living Tomorrow started in 1995, if I remember well. Are there examples of products that were drawn back from the market, that were tested here, because the consumers didn't like it?
I think, first of all, when we go to 95, it was a kind of special Living Tomorrow project, because ICT was just coming up, and nobody liked to have a computer in his house, nobody liked a mobile phone, but when they visited Living Tomorrow, they saw that, yeah, why not? And everybody has this today, so it's a special kind of Living Tomorrow. What we saw was that we had some items from which they didn't get the price down, and those didn't get into the market. That was a problem. But I don't think that at that moment the problem was new ideas, new concepts. The only things that didn't sold were where the manufacturer was too expensive and people couldn't buy it, so they didn't get into the market.
Yes,
that's what I see.
A remarkable thing Mrs. Moerman said a few seconds ago was that technology is not the point. From the technological point of view, we can do, let's say, everything, but the question is, what makes sense?
Absolutely.
So that's, in my view, a very, very difficult question. You've got to choose.
Absolutely. And you just asked me the question about the tendencies in society. Well, that's what it's all about. Basically, these trends in our society dictate what the needs are. And then we have to understand what people really want, and then you come with solutions that make sense.
Yes, but
I have a nice example, Mr. Brakke. We went inside of the building the day before yesterday or something like that, and you said to me at the cocoon in the children's room, what's this all about? We thought. And I was here with my son yesterday, and he said, oh, the nicest thing I saw is this. I would like to have something like this at home. So it does depend on the people, the age, everything, what somebody likes and wants to have.
You just wanted to say that I'm an old man, of course. But okay.
Somebody has to do the dirty job.
That's a role to play, of course. But all I wanted to say that, of course, what Peter said is right, but most of your companies have got huge marketing departments. Do you still need Living Tomorrow then?
Yes, I think...
Mr. van der Putten.
I think we've covered that point already before. I think it would be desirable that many of the things that are demonstrated here fail in the future. I don't think, yes, I mean it, because we know in advance that not everything will be successful. The point is to try to increase your probability in the market, because technologically speaking, as the Minister said, a lot of things can happen. Now, what is the price? What is the acceptance? How convenient is it? Because you said healthier, safer, but I would definitely need to add more convenience. This is what people, convenience is time saving, easy to use, intuitive. It should be intuitive. A lot of new technologies, you require a book or, very difficult to read to understand. So that's what I believe is very important, yes.
Okay, Peter?
If I may add something, Mr. Goodhall said that we need to work on innovation with all our companies, with all our employees. And I think that's another good reason why Living Tomorrow exists. Because we are that platform where we can cultivate innovation, where we are not only communicating with the visitors, but also interact that much with the people of all these companies that participate in Living Tomorrow. And the more the innovation thought is cultivated, the better this company is able to perform.
Yeah.
One of your questions.
Yes.
Does it make sense? And what makes sense within innovation? We really think that it makes sense when it gives something, when it adds something to the consumer. And perhaps for the moment not being aware of what it will add in the future. But when you add something for the consumer, then the acceptance for innovation is great. And this doesn't have to be only technology. It can be design, it can be whatever it is, but not only technology. There are other things.
And there is another simple line which says that what makes sense is what can be brought to the market successfully. Just as simple as that.
Well, can I react to that?
Yes, please.
First of all, you asked for the trends in society. My company, which is Unilever, which basically provides products in the area of domestic hygiene, personal care and nutrition, we spend a lot of time on this. And one of the trends which we have seen over and over again in every part of the world, whether it's in Manhattan, in a very upmarket household, or whether it's in a little rural village in India, is this what we call internal quest for vitality. Health-related issues, but not only health itself, because vitality in the broadest sense. And you see everywhere in the world this is playing a major role. I think technology is driving this. The fact that people are aware through television screens what is there. So this is very clearly what drives within my company very strongly our innovation process. The second point I'd like to make, I think the marketplace is a very, very reliable judger of success of innovation. And of course, many things you bring to the market will fail. You have to build that in advance. And you have to accept that because you have to take risks. You can't only have a 100% failure rate, of course. You have to be successful as well. So I think that would be the other point I would like to make, is that the marketplace is a very, very reliable judge. And calling in advance what is going to be successful and what is not going to be successful is a very, very difficult one. And the last point I'd like to make, successful innovation is, yes, I agree about diversity and openness to change, but in the end, being very close to your customers. Listen to what they have to say. Delhaize is a very large customer of ours. We have to listen what they are saying. Yes? And what he says today may be different what he thinks tomorrow. And this is why we have to continuously be very close to these people, because they get millions and millions of consumers over their shop, in their shop every day. They pick up the signs, and we have to have the sensitivity.
Very last question is for you, Peter. I saw the video, the complete video of the Amsterdam debate, and one of the CEOs there said, on Living Tomorrow, on your team, and I quote, "They see what everybody sees, but they do what nobody else does." What do you see and what do you do in summary?
Well, what can I add if you get such a compliment? I mean, basically...
Give us your secret, just as simple as that.
There is no hidden secret. I mean, it's clear everybody is or should be interested in its future. As an individual, as a business person, as a politician. And we have created a tool to deal with that. And since we're doing that for 15 years, we're quite successful. And we get the support of all these people. So this asks for more. And we see the system working. We see it on the reactions. We see it on the results. In a way, it's even crazy that nobody else does it, because it's full of logic.
Thank you, Peter. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, and let that be our conclusion, Living Tomorrow teaches us, in fact, a lesson. The future world is in your hands.